All right, hey folks, welcome back. So this is actually starting a very large canvas. This is just under 6 feet, and it's a landscape from around rural Maryland. I'm doing a few of those lately. This is the study I did of it in oil. Actually, I did a couple of studies of it. I did this gouache piece too. Didn't work out as well as I wanted to in gouache, but the oil worked out all right. This is a very subtle, kind of rolling, sinuous landscape. I'll show you the photograph too that I'm working from. But I'm going to reference the oil a lot because I like working from my study paintings. Because in the study paintings, I tend to capture the details that I want to capture and not get lost in all the photography details if I try to focus too much on that. But this is what the other photograph that I'm working from. You can see that I really love this just very gentle rolling kind of wave of wheat. The solitary tree, the tractor lines going to it. This tree line shape is quite nice, cutting the horizon, and these very oystery blues and grays rolling into this kind of rosy light. This is an early morning over this field. So with that, I've already used some, I was painting another painting earlier tonight, so I've got a nice amount of paint on the canvas that I'm going to use up for this. I'm just doing the underpainting tonight, so just try to get some paint up here, start seeing the piece as a whole if I can. But eventually I'm going to need to make some room on here to do what I want to do. But I've got some nice big brushes, still wet from the other painting I was working on. So let's jump right in. So I've got these grays here, so I'm going to start blocking in some of these oystery kind of colors here. And I'm painting over an old painting that I've had around for years and finally decided that I was never going to do anything with it. It's kind of a fantasy type painting because I'm a game developer, and so I also do illustration work. But that one wasn't one that I was doing anything with and was never really going to hang up again. So I was talking to my wife, who's an artist as well, and she asked for a Maryland painting because that's where we moved to recently, to hang in our dining room. So this is going to be a birthday present for her, which she will watch happen. It will not be a surprise, partly because she always tells me when my paintings are done. She's got a good eye for that. So I'm just blocking in a lot of rough colors. I want to get kind of the key of everything. And then I'll do some more detail work later on. So I'm just capturing the shape of things. It's fun at this stage. I love a blank canvas. I love jumping in with these first big broad colors and strokes. Everything's wet, everything flows together. It's kind of a mess. I have a blast with that. I'm not so much for the details. Other artists are really excellent at those. And I tend to like these very big, bold strokes and how they play with each other and how the paint kind of mixes a little bit and creates its own chaos. I find these surprises that I wasn't expecting. I capture things, the spirit of things in ways that I didn't intend. If it's going well, if it's a good night, we'll see if it's going to be a good night tonight. The first painting I did went all right. So I'm trying to roll through that. Sometimes that means that you're on momentum, you're loose, you're moving, you've got the blood going, and the paintings start falling together in a row. Sometimes it means you get one good painting and you're overconfident and you mess up a lot of paintings after that. So we'll see where this happens. But I do love these oystery grays. They flow through here. And it's just undulations. It goes from light to dark and just kind of flows and dances very subtly. Then it comes down to this kind of more defined shape of the rose and yellow and warmth before it strikes the horizon line of these trees. And there's a kind of stillness and anticipation to this landscape that I was very excited about. So I'm going to start going to a little bit darker in my sky. Bring in some That's probably way darker than I intended. Yep, it was. All right, so I want to bring back in some of this gray. So bring in some brown. All right, that may actually be quite nice. You can get trapped when you're doing this, though, of these, when you're working from an existing palette, because you may be looking for shortcuts. I can. Or I'm like, oh, that's close enough. I don't need to mix a new color. Or tune it just slightly to what's actually on the canvas. So it's a nice way to be efficient and use paint up that you'd otherwise let dry up or throw out. I don't like doing that. So it's nice in those ways. But you have to be mindful and vigilant. That feels nice. It's just, you get these big, on a big canvas like this, you just get these lovely, you just feel like I'm chasing across the canvas like this with this lovely color. Go a little lower with it though. This to me is when painting feels like what I imagine really talented musicians feel like when they're really going. To me, this is where you can get that kind of feeling of creation, the art itself moving through you. When I get into the details and finishing the painting, that's a little more work for me. Some artists really excel at that. But I'm not normally one of them. And this is fun because I'm painting on a previous painting. It's quite dark. Darker than I normally start on a painting, and I'm actually really enjoying that. The blues are really singing off that dark brown, green base. I thought this was going to be problematic. I thought I was going to have trouble pulling things out, but instead it's showing some really lovely contrast. But again, we'll have to see how it all falls together once everything's present. Yeah, this is fun, enjoying this. It's nice when painting's fun. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's not work. Sometimes it's, I mean, no, it definitely is sometimes work, but sometimes it's not that it's fun, it's not that it's work. Sometimes it's just emotional. Sometimes it's chaos. And all those have their value. Work is good, chaos is good, feeling things is good. I often find that my emotional state really does come across in the work. I'm a generally pretty happy person, but I can appreciate, the value of a spectrum of emotions. And I enjoy how paintings can evoke all that. Landscapes, it's like, you think you're just painting a place. I used to think landscapes were pretty commonplace to paint. I've come to find them deeply emotional. Not just that sense of connection to a place, and not just that feeling of memory or knowing a place well or learning it. I'm getting paint on my arm from these brushes. I need to get a better setup for when I have these big canvases here. But I was saying the emotional feeling of painting a landscape. They're like portraits. Like you're spending time focused on something and trying to get its unique characteristics. And with that, you often portraying how something feels, the temperature, the stillness, the weather, the movement of the air, the feeling of the air building up between you and something far away from you. You start to get something of the emotional feeling of a place. Yeah, I'm really enjoying that. So these are darker clouds I'm going to bring in over here as well. But I might go ahead and do that. They're very desaturated. There's a lot of really nice, lovely blues through here, and even kind of I'm going to come back in here with just a touch of a little bit more yellow to this shortly. Oh, let's do it now. It's fine. And it creates this kind of silvery light to it. But the clouds I'm about to paint in are much more desaturated. They're a little darker, a little stormier. It's quite nice. Contrast is lovely. And then we get in here with the rose that I'm going to bring in a little bit. I fell in love with this morning when I was painting, when I was photographing it. It was near my son's daycare drop-off. I dropped him off early and get back for work, but I stopped along the way and took photographs of this farmland rolling. And it just feels like a wave in a storm, doesn't it? Like it's almost like I'm doing a seascape. And just like out in the middle of the ocean. And it's just rolling. I really do have a blast with this stuff. I don't paint big like this that much anymore. And you're seeing me get a little childlike about it. And really giddy, which is nice, I think. It is for me. I don't know if it's for y'all, but I'm having a good time. So who knows if this painting tonight's going to go well, but I'm having a good time. So again, just being in I'm trying to black out these places where the canvas is showing through. I don't want those kind of big splotches of brown right now, especially in the sky where it's meant to be this cascading, oystery bluish gray. So, but again, I'm just letting some things kind of dance. A little bit of cooler blue here, a little bit warmer, brighter here. Flashes of white, silver coming through there, cascading back down into darker blue over here. I'm going to punch out these darker grays here. Let me go ahead and do that. I think I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I'm getting lost and enjoying this, which is good. But I need to make sure that I'm looking at the piece as a whole. So let's bring out some raw sienna. My palette's getting crowded from that other painting's work tonight. Probably clean up this in a little bit. So I want to bring in some ultramarine, some cobalt, really darken that down. Let's see, how's that looking? Yeah, you can see that it's trying to get darker and less saturated. And that's what's nice about the browns and the blues together. Okay. All right, let's bring these in. And I don't mind these kind of striking up against the rest of that paint and combining with them. Bring back in some more darks too. Let's bring in some actually real dark brown. because they're kind of feathery through there anyway. So like that's quite dark, but I'm kind of liking it. I'll play with that for a little bit, and I can always brighten it up if I need to. And this brush has some lighter gray in it already, I know, so I'm going to get some of that dancing in. And that might work, that might not. I think it's working though. I could also switch to another brush, but I don't have that many giant brushes right now. I'm building up a new collection. Yeah. Now this is a really kind of simplistic shape. I want to get some of those extra like kind of just lines and clouds coming in, but things are a little wet for it, so I won't get much of that in yet. I can feed in some of that. Make this feel a little more naturally part of the sky. I like bold brush strokes, but I don't like, from my work, to look at it and say, oh, an artist did that with their hand. Of course, people know that as they look at work. But I don't like that to be what they think of. I don't want them to think about me when they see the painting. I want them to think about the landscape and what it feels like to them. The emotions it creates, the memories it creates, or draws forth. All right. So I tend to try to not make the brush strokes not sit in the world of the painting, if that makes sense. They can look like brush strokes, they can be bold, they can be this kind of movement of air, but I personally like them to feel like they're living in the universe of this, and not that reminding you constantly that an artist made them. Okay. Trying to decide if I'm going to go here or here or here next. Let's go ahead and finish this guy. Let's stay in that universe that we're talking about. Okay, I'm still using the same brush, but it's okay, I think, because I'm kind of living on the same key of this cloudy, cloudy sky. I am seeing some bits of unexpected color come in, but not in a way that's bothering me yet. I am going to clean up some of this. Let's just pull that in here. Pardon, we'll do some maintenance real fast. Okay, hold on. Let's get that nice and clean. Give myself some more room. I've had this glass palette that I fixed with a sheet of paper, white paper. Sometimes people use gray, which is quite nice because you get more of a neutral ground. I might do that for my next one, or maybe a little portable one. But this glass palette I've had for 3 moves in 2 countries and 2 coasts. I'm amazed it has not broken any of those. All right. See me getting paint in my arm. So let's clean that up too. I shouldn't be leaving that on me. All right. Now, let's bring in some of that rose. Let's bring this big boy out again. We can still use this, but I want to bring in some white. Get that paintbrush bristle out of there. These are new brushes, so I'm getting a little bit of unexpected hairs. Now, you see I just used a tiny bit of crimson. Crimson's a strong, strong color for mixing. It'll jump right in there and kind of take control. How are we looking? I feel like that might be good. can always bring in a lot more light if I want to. Yeah, I think so. Just gonna take advantage of what's on my palette knife. I'm still staying with a big brush, just because I find that if I go small, one, it becomes less fun for me. Maybe I can start capturing details better, but I lose the kind of athleticness of the painting, of the process. And you can feel it. And sometimes you want that, like you want to key up specific notes, touch specific details, draw out bits of the painting, lead the eye around the piece. But if I do it too early, then it all kind of lands in that level of detail more quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in a little bit more crimson. So you can see, like, I really don't need much. There's just that much, and then look how much it takes over. Which can be really quite nice, but you need to be mindful of it, that's all. And I want some more white. I'm out of white. I'm always surprised when I'm out of white. Every single time. This tube of white has really seen better days. The paint inside is quite lovely and good, but the tube is starting to fall apart, which is not great. Let me wipe off my hands some. I want to keep them clean. So this is working out well that I'm getting this base down. Now, who knows what I'll paint over this in the next round. But some of this will surely persist right through to the very end. All right, let's see if that's too bright. I don't think so. Yeah, nice rose to it. Subtle. I love this solitary tree. There's the rest of the tree line, but it's just, that tree is just sitting lonesome at the end of those there's tracks here, which I don't have in this painting. You can see them here. So I had them in, but they just leading to this tree, which is just sitting right at the horizon line almost. I want to bring out some blues here. I know it already. I might go ahead and do that while things are wet. I'm thinking about it. I think it's almost reflected off something, this level of blue. It's glowing in that bottom of that cloud. I love the purple glow down here too. Yeah. Just lovely undulations of color going on right around here. Great. So there's more I want to do with this, but I want to move on very soon and get the rest of this down here stuff going on, the actual field. And the nice thing about starting a little dark up here is that I can get some nice contrast to going very bright, very saturated. So by restraining myself before, I'm able to bring out some really lovely notes now, very simply. I'm not always the most restrained painter, but I try to be. It's that, that phase where I was talking about where it's kind of like dancing or music, and you're really into it. It's always a balancing act. You want to maintain that, control it, enjoy it, be in it, and let go while you're doing it, but also be thinking and planning and holding back a little bit, visualizing where you want to go in your mind, making choices based off that. And you can't really do that except for by practice, and really by failing a whole lot. Just messing up, realizing you went too far. It's muscle memory. It's learning the medium. Wheel throwing for pottery is excellent for it. I've always felt that way. It's the most tactile way, like connection, because you're literally just touching the clay with your hands. You don't want to do it with oil paint. Don't do that with oil paint. But clay is great for it. And you start to learn when you're pulling the clay up on the wheel, and you'll start to pull and pull and pull, and over time you'll realize that you're communicating with the clay, and you're getting a sense of when it's about to break and pull apart. This language you develop with the medium is so tactile. Same thing in art, painting. It's just not as physically connected, so it's more of a sort of a feeling, an emotional level, and kind of awareness. It's a lot of fun. It's not always fun when you're in the act of failing, but as you develop that language and start to feel yourself use it, it's very rewarding. And it starts to teach you to kind of embrace the failures as fun too. And ride the failure. Sometimes you can capture a failure by the tail, see where it goes, and land somewhere unexpected, and learn from that too, and often get a piece out of it you didn't expect that you would like as much as you do. So I've come back in, I'm talking poetically now instead of describing what I'm doing. But now I'm coming into this dark, dark tree line, which is the real kind of anger of the landscape. It's the darkest piece of the painting. There's not much detail to be found in it. It's just silhouettes on the horizon for the most part. There's a little bit, and I want to suggest some of that, but for now, with the underpainting, all I'm doing is getting the shape in. This anchoring dividing line along the horizon, this sinuous kind of dancing figures of trees. Yeah. Oh, I've got, of course, my pal here, my solitary tree. I can't forget him. And he's actually a little complicated. You can see he's got some, this tree has some light shining through in places. More than I even did on that. And I wanted to come back into that at some point, but it's hard. I find to land that speckled light coming through trees. For my style, I almost kind of have to just to sort of suggest it let the paint strokes blur a little bit. See what happens. Embrace that I'll not get all that detail of coming through. So I'll come back into that with a sky brush here in a moment. All right. Making good progress. So next up, let's come bring out this together. This base is actually pretty good for what I want here. It's the one thing that didn't work super well in this piece was that I think this is too light. There's a nice contrast in this landscape with this very rich golden color, and this got too white and fell into the rest of the painting a little bit too much. So I want to keep some of this contrast. So this dark is quite nice. The fact that it's lighter than the tree line is good. I want to bring it out a little bit more and cover up that old painting that's there. But I don't need much. I really don't. All right, so to do this, I'm going to clean up a palette knife. Let's bring you out. I'm just going to start with something a little controlled. I think that's it. Just something simple. Let's wash off a brush. Start bringing it in. And what's going to be challenging here, I tried to get it here in the little oil, is that this is one color, so to speak. It's all wheat, an overcast day. But there is this very subtle kind of dance happening all through it. Just waves of where the breeze blows through and just slightly shifts the light. This very diffuse overcast light. So you're really getting this kind of like rolling wave of silver, just lightly passing over the whole thing. Which is lovely. I'm getting into some of that silicoil. There's a silicoil tank here I'm using to clean my brushes. But the liquid in the bottom can get into the brush and loosen up all your paint if you're not careful. So I'll need to be more careful. It doesn't have the same quality as liquid or painting medium, so I tend to avoid it. So again, I'm not doing much yet because just want to get this locked in as a base underpainting. And I'll play more later. All right, I'm bringing out a raw sienna, so let's bring that back out too. I'm trying to use up these old tubes of paint. But that process is messy. I've got some paint keys to using these tubes of paint, but I'm being a little lazy and trying to focus on the act of painting, and I'll clean up and sort things properly in a little bit. All right. Back in it. So this is straight from the tube, but I'm going to play with that some on the canvas. So we'll get there. Just lay that in with a palette knife. I don't do a lot of palette knife painting. It's not really my thing. But sometimes I'll just get some paint on the canvas that way. And then I'll play from there. It's also a nice way to not waste paint. Navigate around this light over here. So I've got I didn't draw them in. I should do that. Because the tracks come out at a very kind of tricky angle. It's almost surreal the way it comes across in the painting. It's not quite right because it's in such a forced perspective. I remember that when I was looking at it in person too. So again, just roughing this in. Talking a little less right now because I'm kind of concentrating on this part. Simplest part of the painting, one big field of grass. Most daunting. Because I think this is also the part of the painting that is the easiest to land in. Oh, it all kind of feels the same. And as I said, I really want to capture that feeling. Those shapes of it's almost big triangles across this landscape. All right. I don't want to go too saturated either. That might be what I'm doing right now, and I got to be careful because hey, it's not brown. The light moving across this field is silvery, and that's what happened here. Is I went too bright with that silver. So I'm letting the paintbrush follow the flow of the wind now, which can be nice. It can also, for me, I'm not making judgments on other people's artwork. There's painters that really can own that. For me, sometimes when I overdo the paintbrush following the flow of the wind or terrain or whatever, over much, it can come across as gimmicky because it looks like a shortcut instead of actually painting the thing for real. So I've got to be paying close attention. I have a dear friend, Stasia Eriksson. She's a really good artist. She's been a big influence on me for a lot of things in life, but she often fussed at me for believing I knew what something looked like and acted like and felt like in my head more than looking at it for real, really looking at it. It was a great lesson. It stayed with me. I don't always do it. Sorry, Stas. But I try. And I carry it with me, and it's definitely made me a better painter because of it. So what I liked about this part was after this little bend, and maybe it's the wind blowing it, those tractor treads fall away into nothing. Yeah. So I think we can go a little brighter. I'm going to tone it down though to be less saturated. Down here at the bottom, that might be too much, but I'm going to kind of feather it in. Yeah, too much, but I'll bring that back. That's closer. And it's okay if I don't land all this time around, because I kind of let it sit some. Paint's getting pretty wet down here. I'm a pretty wet on wet painter, but I do like it to sit. Now, one thing, and I try to capture this here, there's this crisp divide line of where the light, because the terrain is flowing away from us there, the perspective is really drawing in tightly this thin strip of silver light across the top. I didn't land it as well as I wanted to because the paint got a little mixed with the green. Bigger canvas, I have a little bit more room to play. Again, this is not something I want to overdo. But we'll put in the line and then I'll bring it back into the painting where I need to. Yeah, see, it falls away fast if I'm not careful. So where that silver is diffuse and subtle through here, across the top, because it's condensed and we're getting at more of an angle, it's stronger for just a little stretch. Because the flow of this is so subtle that sort of it becomes exponential right there at the very end. But it's not a line. We're still getting that gradient of this very gently rolling landscape. So I don't want to fall into the line trap. It is a boundary, it's a threshold. And you can see I'm going back and forth between looking at the photograph, looking at the canvas. I love painting from life, ideally. But I've got a really lovely full-time job. And I got 2 even lovelier little boys and a wonderful wife. So, but especially the boys keep me from painting from life a lot. During the daylit hours, I want to be with them any chance I get. So the accommodation is that I do more paintings from photograph than I'm normally used to. But I get out and paint from life as much as I can to keep myself kind of fresh and remembering what the landscape looked like, felt like, and not getting too trapped in painting from photograph. Because like I say, you can get lost in details. You see things differently when they're in person. Lost a little bit of my line there. So I just about got the whole painting in. I say this is getting pretty wet down here, so I don't want to do too much more to it. I think this area is not working for me, but it's also kind of hard to get to with the palette lamp. So I might mess with this another time. I'll just kind of throw in some paint to lighten it up because it's a little dark from the underpainting. This might be where I leave this for now. Yeah, for now. I don't like this. This isn't landing for me yet. Again, it goes back to that, the brush strokes are sticking out from the universe of the painting too much. They're kind of commenting on themselves as brush strokes. I don't know that I can fix that without overdoing it right now, but I'm going to try. So I've been doing these paintings, starting to record the videos of them. Played around with doing that on Instagram, was looking at Twitch a little bit. Right now I've landed on doing them through YouTube because I can do this screen, this camera, and then also edit in this one, looking down onto the palette so you can see what I'm doing and mixing as I work. If that's working for you, give a shout out on YouTube and just mention what isn't working, what is working. If there's more things you'd like to see or have me talk about and explain as I do them, because I don't really always know that what I'm doing is interesting or novel, because it's just sort of it's instinct bred by habit. That's feeling much, much better. Subtle, still brush strokes. But now the cloud is kind of living in the atmosphere. Just a little bit more. There's a couple of crisp edges I want to bring out there. Not much. Keep this kind of fuzzy, which is working. I wonder if you can hear the crickets outside. I've got the doors open to let ventilation come in. The sunroom is right behind me. Which is nice. So I'm bringing some of that glow over to the stretch. I can see that it kind of makes its way here. See, now that's just white. I don't want white, I want glow. So let's bring in some color to it. It's got hints of yellow, a little bit of blue, but it's not just light gray. Almost nothing is. Grays are rich in color. They're lovely. But it takes some time. There's actually some nice structure that I'm missing back here. I'm getting too light for it though. There we go. That's it. Yeah, there's some nice structure where this cloud just tapers off, dissolves into the rest of that sky. I think I was saying something about grays. I think you got it. So let's fade that in a little bit. Yeah. Just a touch here too. A little bit of that light, not much. This is very subtle over here. Yeah, that's all. Still, we're just getting a little bit of contrast underneath those darker clouds. Yeah. Now this is a little muddy and messy. So let's play with this some. A little dark, a little dark. It's okay. What's nice now is like the paint's wet here and thick, which loses control for me a little bit as I try to come into it and do things. Because mixing on the canvas, that can either get you muddy real fast, sometimes it creates this kind of key to things that the colors and tones and shades all live in, which can be quite nice. And you also get some surprises that you weren't expecting or planning. They just happen because of the kind of magic of the painting or the kind of chaos of it. All right. Well, I think that's what I'm going to do tonight. I hear my wife coming upstairs. I'm going to spend time with her. But thank you again. Pleasure hanging out with you all. So hope you had a good time. Thank you.